Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roger Hartman, and I am the chairman of EFPA in Luxembourg, the last EFPA entity created in 2020. It is my big honor to moderate this panel, which is, it is very important to state it, a European panel. It's a EFPA European event. And this is important to say because we do a lot of things in EFPA on a national level. And this one has some specific operations we do at the European level, and this is a good example. It is for me particularly important to mention to you that we have today a full house. And full house means that we were basically right in the way to organize such an initiative in the middle of October, where we have a lot of school holidays all over Europe. But we are right, because we are, if we count the direct registrations and the registration via LinkedIn, we get a population of roughly 800 people, which is definitely a full house. And for us, a proof that our topic was right and that the theme is in line with all the certified members. Yes, this event is done for the EFPA certified professionals. It's done for them. Important to specify who our clients are. But we also invited to this event EFPA friends and even EFPA friends of friends, which brings that we have a population which is really focused around what we consider as a very important and strategic topic related to ESG. We believe that the ESG topic for an organization who tries to improve in a permanent way the quality of service offered by the client advisors to private clients, that this focus is totally essential. And it is essential for two main reasons. The reason number one, I always like to begin with the boring one, because it's based on regulation. If you do not know what it is, today, after the 1st of August, after the introduction of new MiFID II clear assignments looking at client preferences on ESG, you are not in order. So it's regulation. You have to know what it is because the law forces you to know what it is. That's the first reason. But it's basically the negative one, because we should never do things because we are obliged to do. The second reason is the challenge of all what we have on sustainability, on climate, on everything, can only be reached if public and private work closely together. And public and private means, on the private side, also an organization like EFPA, where we have 70 to 80,000 professionals advising their clients, private clients, where they can bring a huge impact in the way to discuss with their final private clients about ESG and what has to be done in order to save our planet. That's probably where we can say, and our chairman, Emanuele Carluccio, will address it more in detail. It's somewhere our mission. We were born in 2000, around the turn of the century, to bring the level of client advisor at a better level. What we have here is a type of a new additional crusade looking at all the ESG topic. And that's really a mission. Before presenting the panelists, I would have a personal word to all the certified professionals. I'm talking to you and to you only. And I don't know how many you are, but you are a lot. In order to validate your CPD, you will have to fill at the end of this webinar, you will receive a questionnaire with 10 questions. It's a multiple choice. It's very easy, very straightforward, but it allows us to validate the fact that you basically were not only here, but you were also listening, which is nicer, and also understood, which is top of it. And which means that these 10 questions should not be a challenge for you. But this is the way for us to be sure that we validate in a good way the CPD value on your credential for your 2022 CPD accounting. That was something important to say. But let's now move to the presentation of the panelists. And I would like to begin with our chairman, because he's somewhere the host, because we took the initiative to organize that. It's Professor Dr. Emanuele Carluccio, who is the chairman of EFPA Europe, of the central organization with the 12 entities forming the European environment. Emanuele is a professor at SDA Bocconi School of Management in Milan, one of the most famous university, not in Italy, but in Europe or in the world. And he brings tremendous value to us. And I'm very happy that he's part of this panel discussion. After, we will have Paul Shahin. Paul Shahin is working for the Luxembourg Green Exchange. So important in Luxembourg. It's a role model for many, many other places. And we know Paul for quite some time. Paul is a sustainable research manager, lecturer at the LGX Academy, and one of the driving force behind this initiative. Paul is also for EFPA Luxembourg, a regular speaker and at our own CPD environment. And he brings a lot of value to our professionals in the CPD environment. Thank you for Paul to be once again with us at this occasion. After, we have somebody that I know very well, but you do not know for the moment. It's Denise, because I know Denise for many, many, many years. Because Denise is, like me, one of these foreigners who took the challenge to take the Luxembourg passport via naturalization. We were not born in Luxembourg, but we went Luxembourgish to the naturalization process. I came from Switzerland, and Denise came from Turkey. Totally different background, but a common goal to integrate. And she's a perfect professional. She moved from a very corporate environment to UNDP. For the ones who do not know what UNDP means, it's a United Nations Development Program. So you know what it is. She is, Denise, an international UNDP consultant, very much focused on SDG. That's why you see my pins here. You see also the pins of Paul. Very important. We are apostle, and she is more than an apostle because she goes on the field. That's why she's on this line, because she will tell us what SDG means when we are in the deep heart of Africa, or when we are in the deep heart of some ex-Soviet Republic environment in Central Asia. Thank you, Denise, for being with us at this occasion. And we have finally Daniel. Daniel also, I will read in detail what UNEP-FI means, because a lot of people do not know, I'm sure. That's why we have this panel organized. UNEP-FI means United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative. This is what all these letters mean. And Daniel Bouzas is a regional coordinator for Europe, for the European continent. And I think it's Europe seen in the large way. It's not the European Union. It's really the way we look at Europe from basically from the Azores to the Ural. Ural is probably not the good word to use in the current political environment, but in the books of geography, it still goes until Ural. Daniel oversees all this activity, supports thematic and sectoral activities, including the key focus of European regulation. Frankly said, from a content point of view, I expect Daniel to bring a lot of additional content for people. A lot of these 800 participants will know very little about UNEP-FI. And that's something where probably the learning curve with Daniel, I expect it to be the highest. And this is where we are. So we see we have a good mixture, we have a good combination. Things are well balanced, and without losing too much more time, I would like to give the word to all these different persons for the participants to understand. Emanuele, Paul, Denise, and Daniel will make a short presentation, which basically puts the set. After that, I will probably ask one single personal question to all of them. And after we go in an open discussion on a certain number of themes. And very much towards the end, you have a Q&A button. And on this Q&A button, you will be able to ask questions. You will not be able to talk to us because this would have been far too complicated, far too difficult to manage, also far too noisy, to be very frank. The noise was our main concern. So you will be able to ask with the Q&A button that you see on the bottom part of your screen. And now I would like to give the word to Professor Dr. Emanuele Carluccio.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you to everyone, to our guest speaker. Excellent profile, as Roger got the opportunity to show during the presentation. And before starting my very brief introduction, I would like to thank all the organization. First of all, Roger, for proposing such a nice event, for getting the support of Patrick as chairman of our SQC, the Standard Qualification Committee, and of course Stefka, who is always supporting us in preparing all the stuff and the materials to allow us to organize every meeting in the best way. I thank, of course, all the certificate holders who are our clients tonight, being present in such a huge number to this event. As all of you already know, EFPA started the process of offering independent and professional certification in the sector of financial advisor and financial planners already more than 20 years ago. When we started, we focused on the real top activity of our advisor and financial planner, offering the EFA, the 20 days equivalent program certificates, which is mainly focused to our advisor, having to do mainly, if not totally, with private clients. Then we organized also the EFP, European Financial Planners, which is focused on the activity run by the financial planner, getting in touch not only with private clients, but also with companies owners who have different problematic to be set up all together. Later on, when the ESMA came out with the guidelines on knowledge and competences in 2015, 2016, we decided to introduce 2 more certificates, which are exactly designed on the ESMA criteria. Article 17 and Article 18, showing some precise elements of what are the minimum knowledge of the people offering information on financial products, and Article 17, and with Article 18, the minimum knowledge of people offering a basic advisory services. This is the reason why in 2018 we introduced 2 more certificates, the EIA, European Investment Assistant, and the APE, European Investment Practitioner, which completely our set of certificates we offer in the market. It's kind of a pyramid. We have the top, the EFP, and starting from the bottom with the A. A couple of years ago, we started to think about ESG. When we understood that ESG wouldn't have been just a commercial spot to offer different products, just to convince the customers to take into consideration a different asset type of products, we understood immediately that the ESG could have been a driver of real value in the portfolio of our clients. And this is the reason why we decided to introduce a new certificate, the EFPA ESG Advisor that you see on the screen, which is a quite independent certificate, which means that it can be obtained by people not already having another EFPA certificate, so newcomers in the EFPA world, or an add-on certificate for people already getting an EFA or EAP, deciding to get some more insight, some more precise information, some more knowledge, technical knowledge on ESG, just getting these new certificates. It has been launched at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and we got at the end of the first year more than 4,000 certificates all over Europe. It has been a great success, and it's going to be also this year a great success. The response we got from the different local EFPA was huge, and this is the proof that we took a great decision to cover also the ESG factors by launching these certificates I'm talking about and reshaping the contents of our APE, EFA, and EFP certificates, putting some ESG matters and ESG topics inside our full program. Coming back on the EFPA ESG Advisor, which is our totally devoted certificate to do the ESG matters. As you can see, it's a 3 days equivalent program. Generally, all the local EFPA decided, as they did in Italy, in Spain, and in Luxembourg, to launch these certificates through web organized activity, learning activity. So it's a distance learning course, very well designed, which covers 8 different areas. As you can see very quickly, we start with the key definition and drivers, just to let our certificates holder understand what is environment, what is social, what is governance. And then we go through the more technical part of the course, focusing on the ESG factors, which affect, of course, the process of security evaluation. Then we start trying to understand how the investing strategies are affected by the sustainable factors, by the engagement, and we give a special look to the different products that the sector, the financial sector, has been proposing in the last couple of years, trying to cover this new thematic, these new factors, this new key driver of value. Of course, there is also a legal framework which is changing, I wouldn't say every day, but every month. And of course, our certificate holder must be kept on updated on the innovation we get on the legal framework. As Roger was just mentioning before, there is a huge new effort on the Know Your Customer rule through the questionnaire, where we are forced to try to understand how our client is interested in getting portion of the portfolio totally devoted to ESG factors. And of course, once we know the customers through the questionnaire, we need to close the cycle through a sustainable analysis on how the portfolio is really invested in ESG topics. So I feel that with these certificates, EFPA did the best we could do in order to be closer to our financial advisor and financial planner in order to help them to really understand if the solution that the banks they are working for, or the network of financial advisor, independent or trade agent they are working for, offer a real concrete answer to the need of the clients who really want to take care about the ESG factors. So I hope that these certificates can be taken into consideration by our public of certificate holder who already entered in the big EFPA family, and we are always at your complete disposal in order to give you all the possible details. I give back the floor to Roger, and I'll be very much interested in listening to what Denise, Daniel, and Paul will present, because they are a key actor in this sector. Thanks a lot again.
Yeah, thank you for this very nice, broad explanation of what we are and what we want to achieve. And in my personal question, I will probably address one or two points that you mentioned, but drilling them perhaps a little bit further down. But this being said, it's the turn now of Paul. Paul, my same pins holder of the 17 SDG, Paul from the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. I would like to give you the words and to explain us what is clearly a success story that, you know, I know Luxembourg like my pocket like 2001, but I never expected in this period of time to have this huge explosion, which goes far beyond Europe, about the role model that the stock exchange in Luxembourg is representing in terms of ESG. Paul.
Thank you so much, Roger, and thank you for having me and inviting me for this very interesting panel. Thank you, EFPA Europe and EFPA Luxembourg. As you said, Roger, at the very beginning, we know each other. I'm very delighted always to talk to EFPA members and certificate holders, and to share some of the knowledge that we have on the Luxembourg Green Exchange. I will be sharing a couple of slides with you today, so please let me know if you can see them. And as you said, Roger, just to share a little bit about the Green Exchange of Luxembourg that maybe some of the participants have heard, but maybe other ones they haven't heard about. So it's not a different exchange than the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. It's exactly the same exchange. However, in 2016, the Luxembourg Stock Exchange took the initiative and took the decision to create what was considered and is still considered the only green exchange that exists around the world. And that came in a very, I would say, timely momentum when it comes to sustainable finance and to SDGs, because as we all remember now, in 2015, there was this very interesting event that took place in Paris, which is the COP21. And at the same timing, there was the SDG conference that took place in Addis Ababa. Well, what is common between the two events, as most of you might know, is that both events were focusing on the role of the financial sector in reaching Paris objectives or achieving the SDGs. So the focus was really on how we can mobilize the financial sector to reorient the capital flows towards achieving these objectives. So the climate objectives of Paris Agreement, or the SDGs. And if we can go back a little bit to the story of the Luxembourg Stock Exchange and how this stock exchange came up with this idea, the Luxembourg Stock Exchange itself is a kind of an old exchange. In a couple of years, we will be celebrating the 100 years of existence of the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. So it's quite old exchange, but it's very innovative. It's very agile. It's very different. And one of these point of differences is that It's an exchange that it's well known, internationally known, as a reference for listing for debt instruments, which is not really every exchange around the world actually do. Not every exchange around the world is specialized in debt instrument and in mainly listing. We definitely do some trading and we definitely do have some equity, but actually the main work and the main expertise is in the debt instruments, so in bonds. And for the history of the sustainable debt instrument, in 2007, when the European Investment Bank issued the very first green bond, they came and they listed this bond on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, as they used to do actually in listing any other bond. And other international financial institutions, sovereigns, corporates, and other issuers started also to do the same since 2007, when they issued their green bonds or other type of sustainable instruments. And that was actually the idea behind, linking between what we can do in the capital markets in order to foster sustainable finance. Well, in 2016, we found out that we have 50%, so almost half of the international market share of green bonds listed worldwide. So we said, okay, then we have a role to do in reorienting capital flows by creating the green exchange. For the ones who are with us, who know a little bit what we're talking about when it comes to green social sustainability bonds, maybe you're asking yourself, okay, there is a lot of standards, principles in the market, governing these instruments, and how you at the Luxembourg Green Exchange, you deal with all of these standards and principles. So the easy and the simple answer to say is that we accept all of these principles as long as those principles are widely accepted. So we do not actually favor ICMA principles on the ASEAN standards or on the CBI standards or any other new standard for these instruments. And that was one of the main strength points or strong points that we have at the Green Exchange, that we tried to adhere to, accept, and to keep the door open for all standards and principles when it comes to the issuance of these instruments. Now, it's not only because we created the Green Exchange at 2016 that we are now present here with you and in other panels and webinars when we talk about sustainable finance. It's because definitely we had a big advantage as the first, runner into this field. But since then, there was a lot of work going on in the sustainable finance market and in the debt capital market. And through the membership of so many working groups and so many initiatives related to this field or to this universe, the Luxembourg Green Exchange managed to gain, but also to contribute. So to gain huge expertise in this field, but also to contribute to all the developments that we saw in the market since 2016. And here, just to give an example, actually, we were part of the high-level expert group of the European Commission that was formed by the European Commission in 2016 in order to put the basis of what we now today know as the European Action Plan in financing sustainable growth. We were part of the TEG, the technical expert group of the European Commission, who came after the ECHLEG group, who worked directly on what we now know as the EU taxonomy. We are part of several working groups within the international capital market associations, contributing to the discussions around sustainability-linked bond, impact reporting, transition finance, and all of these big subjects that we hear about maybe on a daily basis. We're part of the World Federation of Exchanges, United Nations Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiatives, not as, a kind of good membership, but we contribute to the working groups related to sustainable finance within those initiatives, and this is how actually we gain a plus on our knowledge that we have from the daily working in green bonds and social bonds and other instruments. Maybe you are asking yourself, what does that mean? What do we mean to have a green exchange? I think we all believe in the need for transparency when it comes to sustainable finance. And one of the main roles of the Green Exchange of Luxembourg is to bring this transparency to the market. All issuers of these instruments have to somehow disclose on a big amount of information when it comes to environmental impact and social impact of their issuances. Investors from other side, they are looking for this information to make more informed decisions on how and where to invest. And one of the main roles of the Green Exchange is to bring these two parts of the capital markets together and to provide them with a place where they can identify the good investments initiatives and the good investment opportunities to invest in. Since 2016 until now, we managed to keep our leading position among other exchanges who also joined, and they started to work with sustainable instruments worldwide, but we are still the leading venue for the listed sustainable instruments. So we have more than 2,990 securities coming from all of these green countries that you can see on the map. Half of them are green social sustainability and sustainability linked bond, which amount to more or less 800 billion euro in issuances. Maybe it's not only our role as a green exchange, as any stock exchange, in providing this infrastructure service to capital markets. I will skip these two slides to tell you what we also do. We promote innovation in the sustainable finance and the sustainable debt instrument, because what started with green bonds in 2014 and in 2016 for us as a stock exchange didn't stop there. Now we know that we have social bonds, we have sustainability bonds, we have sustainability linked bonds. We also display on our exchange what we call the sustainable funds or ESG funds. And very recently also we started to flag a very interesting instrument which already existed in the market, but now it's kind of earmarked, which is the gender focused bonds. So we keep we try to keep moving on with the developments in the market and to see how the market is developing and to provide investors and issuers more space to show their instruments. And since Manuele spoke about certification and education, I'm happy also to share that we were amongst the first actually who said, okay, we need education in this field. Without educating the financial professionals and even non-professionals, so the new generations, about sustainable finance, we won't be able to accelerate sustainable finance. So we created what we call the LGX Academy. And it's within this umbrella of LGX Academy that I had the chance to talk to some of you maybe during one of the sessions of EFPA in the past. So here we really share expertise coming from the market on those instruments, on the standards, the principles, the taxonomies, the EU regulations, and all what we should know a little bit about if we want to contribute to this field. We didn't stop here. We launched also the LGX Data Hub, which is, again, if you are involved and engaged in this field, you will understand very well how much important is the need for data, for structured data on the environmental and the social impact of the investments through green, social, and sustainability linked bonds. And here we have a data hub that gather the information coming from more than 8,000 instruments listed worldwide. So not only on the Luxembourg Green Exchange, but listed worldwide, to try to provide asset managers, to provide funds managers, and everyone who would like to track, the impact with the ability to look at these information and to do further analysis on it. And our very last contribution to foster the issuances of these instruments is what we call the LJX assistance services. For the very first time issuer of a green or a social or sustainability bond, those issuers might need a little bit more of assistance than only, academy and some courses, because best practice is still developing in the market and we see it on a daily basis. And it's much better for the first-time issuers actually to be on the level of this best practice, better than do less, do the best and be among the best. And here where we can come with our expertise and we can tell those first-time issuers what to do and maybe what better not to do when they issue their very first green or social or sustainability bonds. And maybe I will share with you these 2-3 slides very quickly to see who are these issuers of these instruments. Maybe you will recognize some of them, maybe not, but just to show a little bit the universe of these issuers who list their bonds and who display their bond on the green exchange of Luxembourg. I will just skip this slide because I'm not here to say how much good we are. I will leave it for you to say, and I will stop sharing. I will give the floor back to Roger.
Very good, Paul. Very comprehensive. Exactly what we need to know and to have in our background in order to be better professionals advising our private clients all over the world. Great. Thank you very much, Paul. And now we move to Denise. Denise is it's interesting because she's living in the canton of Zug in Switzerland. Zug is extremely well known all over the globe for 2 reasons. Number one, it's the Delaware of Switzerland, as a lot of tax-oriented guys know, and the tax-oriented guys know what Delaware is, and they will clearly understand what Zug is, because it's a copy-paste of Delaware. And the second reason why Zug is extremely well known, it's because of the crypto valley. This is where everything begins, like the human being in the rift of Africa in Ethiopia. Everything began in Zug. So the good point to begin and give the ball to Denise. Zug is not necessarily the place of birth of all what is related to the 17 SDGs, but I give you this a little bit hot potato in your hand because I know that you are now sitting in Zug, so we cannot bullshit this or us. So that's a good way to begin. Explain you why you are in Zug. Perhaps there is a hidden reason behind. Denise, up to you.
Thank you very much, Roger. I will start by sharing the screen. Thank you, Stefka, you're sharing. Yes, maybe first I want to thank EFPA, Roger, and all the participants here to listen to us and to communicate with us, and I look forward for the questions as well. And just to clarify why I am in Zug, in fact, is I resisted to move to Switzerland. And from when I lived in Dubai for a couple of years, which made a big difference in my life. That's where I found about sustainability, human rights, and really do what I like. And my daughter didn't really like Dubai and wanted to come to the school in Zug. To continue her last 2 years before the university. So I was kind of pushed to live in Zug. But to be honest, I came for 2 years. This is my 5th year because of the community I created. And you will understand what type of community I am creating now around me. And that's why I'm here. But I'm a global citizen. I lived in 4 countries, and I believe that I'm looking for my next one soon. So, so first of all, the presentation is about my consultancy role at UNDP Istanbul International Center for Private Sector in Development. I was asked to be consultant for a specific job, for a specific purpose in Turkey. And I really wanted also to contribute to my country, to give something back. So I worked on the SDG platform with them. And the main thing we did was about SDG financing. So I gave a lot of training in Turkey to entrepreneurs, to banks, to investors, to public offices. And also I have been physically in Istanbul to be trainer of trainers. So really UNDP employees in Ankara, in the capital. So, so this is how we started, and I loved it. I thought that I was doing an impact by giving those training, giving awareness, and at the same time doing and then and contributing to my country. And as a result of this, I became the international consultant and started working with IIC PSD. And the current assignment I have is really what I want to do is Tanzania. So maybe we move to the next slide. So this is what I'm going to cover on the SDG Investor Map training, forums, align, share value, and be the change impact on site. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what happens, I will explain shortly the process that UNDP applies is first, each international center, Istanbul is one, Geneva is another one, for example. They are responsible for a number of countries in different regions, and the Istanbul Center is responsible over 40 countries. And UNDP has an overall project to really, we talked about now previously, blended finance, to make an efficient blended finance to attract the public offices, private sector, as well as the philanthropic money, capital, to the businesses. And to create this blended financing by also de-risking, so that we attract the private sector to invest in the countries of need, meaning emerging countries, developing countries. So Investor Map is about going to those countries by the UNDP really employees. I'm not involved at all in this part. And they work with the government, with the private sector, with the entrepreneurs, accelerators, do interviews and assign some SDGs of need where there is a potential economic development in that country. So this slide is about explaining that, and they share on a platform that I can share with everyone afterwards in the chat. This type of information is called public good, and they share that information. So it's available to everyone, to the investors, to know those countries. And then the process after that is the country office. Like if you take the example of Tanzania, for example, UNDP Istanbul is working with Tanzania. And once the investor maps are done and explained and agreed, then the country office calls for the entrepreneurs in that country only to come to apply, so that we have about 10, 15 at most entrepreneurs aligned with those SDGs that will be in the investment forums. So can we go to the next slide, please? So for Tanzania investor map, there were 5 areas: the agriculture, energy, infrastructure, education, and services, especially tourism. So these were the assigned, and now about more than 100 entrepreneurs applied for this. And we are reviewing these entrepreneurs, and we will come to about 10 that are the most aligned based on the pre-selection due diligence, based on the UNDP's due diligence process, which is very extensive. There is a lot of questioning, scalability, funding, financial results, how impactful the business is, you know, it's very extensive process. And next slide, please. So once these entrepreneurs are selected, we prepare them, and that's when actually I start really working with the UNDP. We prepare them to join those investor convenings in investment forums so that they can entrepreneurs can explain their business models, can talk to the investors. They can have this communication skills when they are face to face with the investor. So far I give SDG financing education, blended financing, innovative financing, and with Tanzania we expand this training courses, and we give them. I give the leadership for SDGs, I call it. So not only about the business, not only about the finance, but also for the entrepreneurs to understand how they can create their company, more conscious company, more aligned with the impact goals, not only the words, but actually going beyond words and to the meaning. So we give the training on the culture, the values of the company, the teams, how to communicate, how they can communicate effectively, how they can be a leader and attract the investors. And as a result, we do for this Tanzania one, we will also give impact measurement course. We are giving the pitching and also the on the how to do the you know, the structures, some awareness on the structures. And next step, which is the last one at this moment, is to have the investment forum. This is what we are currently preparing for. And what happens there in those forums in Tanzania, we have 2 days. The first day is really presenting by the government officials, by the thought leaders, by the investors, what is done on the investor map, what are the objectives, what does that mean for the country, and that gives also an understanding to the attendants and on the ecosystem, on the opportunities, and learning about the investment environment in that country. Then in the afternoons, we always focus on the entrepreneur and investor communication, because the communication is the key first to understand who needs what and then how can we fulfill those needs. And then networking. This is the general concept for all the events. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I always talk about the ikigai, because to me this is Japanese, and for the companies, for individuals, for entrepreneurs, for me, for everyone, what we are doing and for why, for our design of being is the main question. Once that question is found, which is the middle part of the written ikigai, is a combination of between passion, mission, profession, and vocation. Then we actually find our purpose. And this is a statement of purpose for corporation. And this is what we are going through with entrepreneurs to explain them. To succeed and to make an impact, we need to find what we love doing, and that's when the success will come, if we are doing something really we are aligned with. And that's ikigai. There is more behind it, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go through, but I really wanted to share, because this is very important for each individual to find and then create what they want to really give to the planet. And that gives also the consciousness and awareness why we work for impact, why impact investing is important, why going to the on-site is important. And the next slide, please. And yeah, and then being the change. So this was more, this is also something that's very important for companies, and especially I call it intrapreneurs. In other words, the entrepreneurs in the corporate world, because they are able to make the change. Change makers are impact leaders. And if we can make our mission to serve the planet and the people and profit, because we need to realize, we need to be realistic that with the impact investing, we support the planet. In my opinion, we save the humanity, because planet will recover whatever happens. And we need to earn the money. The companies need to be efficient, profitable, to be able to give more to the others. And the beauty of going to the emerging markets and developing markets is that in those countries, they do the projects, they make creation of new things, new products, new services, because they need them. It's not because of a specific intention. They don't need to search for an intention because they know what they need. I seen a project in Philippines. They created a light which works all day. And the reason why creating that light was to support the women who were walking a long distance to look for water, and then for their safety and to see where they are walking to and from, they needed light, which didn't exist at that point in time. So they created this, and then in Asia, this light is being sold, enormously, because they address a specific need that they know. They don't look for a definition of impact, they live the impact. And that's what I found it very exciting. As you see, I get very excited with this. I found it very exciting to be in those countries or to live in that energy. And then I see them each as an impact leader, each as a change maker, because they go beyond the resistance to create something. They don't resist anymore being judged. They don't resist anymore for making any changes. They just do things differently and they create. This is what I see. This is my experience. So I don't know how long I spoke, so that's why I'm going to stop here. And this is me. So I'm from years of investment expert in the fund industry, now with the UNDP SDGs, and I love the cultures traveling, and I give all of that to my daughter as well. So thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic, fantastic. Denise, that's a message of patience. Patience is important, because when you go into these matters, we cannot be bureaucratic or civil servant minded in the strict way of the word. And this patience is something that you really have strongly rooted, and it was quite interesting. And for us, for the panel globally, you are really the one in the field. You cannot say that you are not in the field when you are in Dar es Salaam, in the middle of English-speaking East Africa. Yes, you are in the field. You are not in a hotel in Firenze or in Hamburg. So it's really a dedication. And thank you very much for this close to testimony. Very, very good. Great. Thank you, Denise. And we will go now to our very last panelist with UNEP-FI, with Daniel, discovering more what probably a lot of people in these 800 people around this Zoom will probably largely ignore. And with his experience covering all Europe, he will give us much more flesh and content on what UNEP-FI, what is the role of this organization. There is a lot of UN everywhere. That's a different one from the one addressed by Denise. Daniel, I give you the word to explain us more in detail what you are really doing in this organization.
Okay, so thank you very much. And probably, I mean, I would like to thank also the previous speakers and panelists, because I think we're providing quite of a rounded perspective to the topic, because we have the practitioners, you were saying with Dennis. We also have the Luxembourg Stock Exchange that is like, I see it as a very good platform in terms of engaging with all of the different elements that are participating there, from issuers, investors, as well as the other programs. But of course, I mean, with regards to EFPA, I mean, it sounds like a complicated acronym, the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative. So what we are a part of the United Nations Environment Programme, and we work directly with financial institutions globally. So that's who we are. And we are also quite integrated, let's say, from the European perspective in the EU atmosphere as well. I'm currently sitting in Brussels, and very much as LGX also in the past was participating in the high-level expert group, we participate in the high-level expert group, the technical expert group. We're now in the EU platform on sustainable finance, as well as in the international platform on sustainable finance, where UNDP is also a member, and the high-level expert group from DG EFPA on low and middle-income countries, sustainable finance, where we're also participating there. So I'm going to briefly share some slides, given that also my co-panelists were doing it, just to explain briefly who we are, what we do, etc. Hope you can see it well.
Yeah, very well. Yes.
Okay. So as I said, it's a partnership between the United Nations and the global finance sector. So we work in partnership with 450, but more than 450 banks, insurers, and investors to help create a financial sector that serves people on the planet. What does it mean? Well, what we develop is norms and principles, voluntary, that mainstream sustainable finance within the financial institution. So we're not talking here about products. We're not talking here about how to develop, let's say, specific business lines. We're talking about how to integrate sustainability within the institutions and how to use the portfolio, so the money, the financing that the company, let's say the financial institutions provide towards increased sustainability. So this means towards the Paris Agreement and the SDGs, as very much in the presentation from Paul we were seeing. And what we do is we co-create tools, research, peer exchange with this membership base to deliver, let's say, on that sustainability journey. So we're divided within thematic and industry themes, as you can see here: banking, insurance, investment. Investment now, it's a bit different because we're collaborating with our sister organization, the PRI, so United Nations Principle for Responsible Investment. And we work across the thematic approach. So climate change, ecosystems, positive impact, social issues, plus two more now, pollution and circular economy and regulation. So policy and regulation is a new area, even though we have been involved for quite some time already. So regarding the overview, the membership by sector, as I said, given that now we share our membership on investors with the PRI, we are mainly composed of banks and insurers, 468 members in total. And by region, as you can see on the right, Europe is the most numerous with 245 members, followed quite closely by Asia, Latin America, Africa, and finally North America, which includes the US and Canada. And regarding the principles on our approaches, the key elements are the Principle for Responsible Investment that we created in 2006, now a separate institution, Principle for Sustainable Insurance, 2012, we're celebrating this year the 10th anniversary, and Principle for Responsible Banking, 2019. When I say the 10th anniversary of the PSI, you can also see here that we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of EFPA. We've been alive since 1992, same as myself. So membership in Europe, you can see here 468 members globally, 245 in Europe. That is more than 50% of our membership. And here you can see a bit of the distribution where we have membership in the country or not. And we cover, as Roger was also saying in the beginning, from the Azores to actually Kazakhstan. So it's quite of a broad definition of Europe, but we also look quite closely into the EU. So regarding the frameworks, here you have the industry norms. There are the three principles that I introduced before, 2006, 12, and 19. So investment, insurance, and banking. And then we also have what we have called these coalitions of the willing, that are specific approaches on climate change for achieving net zero in the portfolios of financial institutions. So we work concretely with insurers, let's say, banks and investors, asset owners, in order to reach net zero in their specific activities. Plus, you can also see on the right the TNFD. You may have heard about the TCFD, that is the Task Force for Climate Financial Related Disclosures, that works on climate risk and elements related to it. But this one is working in nature, so on biodiversity and anything related to water, marine resources, etc. We have concrete colleagues also working on that. So if I go one by one, Principle for Responsible Banking, This is a unique framework. We have more than 280 banks signatory. It's around 45% of the global banking sector that has committed. And they commit to what? To align their practice and strategy with the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement. They come up to about 70 trillion of US dollars in total assets, and they are covered on more than 65 countries. So you could see the map before. We have a lot in Europe. Regarding market penetration, you can see here the top 10 banks per jurisdiction, and you can see that at least in Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America, we have almost all of the banks. You can see in Europe we lack HSBC, but they are a member of the Net Zero Banking Alliance, so they are committed to the climate approach. And we are still working for the other regions to expand. What are the principles, you may ask? Well, there are 6, and they are, as you can see on the screen: alignment, impact and target setting, clients and customers, stakeholders, governance and culture, transparency and accountability. This means that the banks need to commit to align their portfolio and business strategy to the Paris Climate Agreement SDGs, to do it through impact analysis and target setting, so clearly identifying in the portfolios where are the key areas of positive impact to increase, negative impact to decrease, and set targets in order to either increase or decrease those impacts. And then to work with clients and customers, stakeholders, to make sure that they are being taken into account, to have a governance and culture that is respectful and integrating these key issues, and to be transparent and accountable. We ask banks to report every year and to be accountable for their actions, and to really showcase how they're evolving in this path. It's a 4-year journey that does not stop at the 4 years. It's just that in the first 4 years, they need to analyze the bank's impacts, set and implement the targets, and report. So those are the 3 key elements that banks commit to when signing the period. And to sign, they just need to sign the principles, become a member, and promote the commitment, and continue working on it during the first 4 years and forward. The principle for sustainable insurance, given the role of the insurers as both risk managers, investors, and insurers, so underwriting plus investments, we're looking into the management of ESG issues, so sustainability considerations across these key elements in order to build a resilient and inclusive sustainable society. The 4 principles are to embed in the decision-making ESG considerations for the insurance business, to make sure that when they talk to the clients and the business partners, to raise awareness and make sure that they manage the risk and develop solutions, work with regulators, governments, and any key player that is participating in this aspect, and demonstrate accountability and transparency in the implementation of the principles, as well with reporting. Regarding climate change, you can see here that we have worked quite concretely on the TCFD, on the disclosures, as well as on alignment, because in many cases, you can see that financial institutions are working in terms of aligning their portfolios, as well as taking away risks from the portfolios. So we are working as well in parallel with these two approaches, and you can see here how we have worked on the climate risk, as well as with the net zero alliances in the alignment. So this is important to say that when we work on alignment, what we're trying to do is to align the portfolio. So the financing of institutions, that probably the people that are listening in the call are helping clients that are, let's say, clients of those institutions to achieve in terms of reaching the net zero by 2050 in the portfolios. So what does it mean net zero? Well, the crisis is to achieve 1.5 degrees warming until 2050. So CO2 emissions need to be cut in half every 10 years until reaching that goal. And the challenge is about the investment. I think, Roger, in the beginning, you were mentioning quite interestingly, one of the key issues that we always talk about, that is this dance between the private and the public sector. So when we talk here, it's about the decarbonization goal cannot be achieved alone by the public or by the private sector. Both need to come together to reach it. And the investment is around 4 trillion each year until 2050. It's a lot of money, and we understand that, of course, the private sector has a key role to play. So how these alliances interplay in the broader net zero network? So the UNFCCC has the Race to Zero campaign that certifies any kind of non-governmental actor that wants to commit to achieving net zero. You can see here that we're talking about finance, corporations, cities, regions, universities, etc. And within the finance industry, you may have heard about GFANZ, so the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, launched last year at COP26 with Mark Carney, Mike Bloomberg, that agglutinates, let's say, aggregates all of the commitments of financial institutions to net zero that are certified by Race to Zero by UNFCCC. The 3 that are convened by the UN are the Net Zero Banking Alliance, Net Zero Astronaut Alliance, that is done through UNEP and the PRI, and Net Zero Insurance Alliance. So this means that these three are managed as a secretariat by UNEP 5. Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, this was launched in 2019, is the most developed. We are asking financial institutions participating here to set intermediate targets starting 2025. It covers all of the major asset classes, equities, corporate bonds, real estate, infrastructure. And what we're asking is to go into specific greenhouse gas reduction targets in the portfolio. So by 2025, it needs to be between 22-32%, and by 2030, 49-65%. Of course, the goal is net zero by 2050. So which kind of targets are they setting? We're looking into sub-portfolio targets. So for example, emission targets in a specific portfolio, like the UN pension fund that wants to reduce the absolute footprint on equity and corporate bonds portfolios 40% by 2025. Sector targets like Pension Denmark to reduce in the most carbon emission intensive sectors their emissions. Engagement targets to work with the customers, work with the investees in order to reduce the emissions. And the financing transition targets to have a specific envelope in order to transition the portfolio. Regarding the Net Zero Insurance Alliance, this is still under development because while you can think that insurers as investors are participating in the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, in this one it's about how to move underwriting portfolios towards climate change mitigation. Normally it's easier on adaptation, but we're looking into this. We're working with PCAF, so the platform for carbon accounting financials, to provide a document on how to do this. And we're going to continue working by 2023 already to launch the target setting protocol where we can actually see how these targets will look like. For now, we have a good amount of insurers that have joined, but as you can imagine, it needs to gain a bit more traction when we have the methodologies, etc., to actually kick off. And the Net Zero Banking Alliance, and this is probably the one that many have heard about, is for banks, where we are asking the members of the alliance to commit to the transition of the operational and attributable greenhouse gas emissions in their lending and investment portfolios. So we're not only looking at bank lending, but also their investment, to align by 2050 or sooner to the, let's say, the decarbonization pathways. We're asking them to set 2030 and 2050 net zero targets, aligning in any case with the 1.5, low or no overshoot, and to annually report on the targets and progress, as well as the role of offsets there. This is a bit of the pathway. With the other alliances, it's similar, but this one has a quite concrete approach because in many cases, it's also aligned with the PRB. So the Principle for Responsible Banking, when a bank sets a climate target, they go through the same methodology as the Net Zero Banking Alliance, which is the guidelines for climate target setting for banks. There are 4 guidelines to set and publicly disclose the long-term and intermediate targets to support the decarbonization, establish the emissions baseline, could be, I don't know, 2020, 2019, and from there decarbonize, use widely accepted science-based scenarios to make sure that they comply with the latest science, and that they need to regularly review the targets as well as make sure that they are aligned with the science. It covers everything on and off balance sheet, 9 key economic sectors: transport, steel, iron, gas. You can imagine the 9 most polluting sectors. The ranges, as I said before, need to be in line with the low or no overshoot scenarios of the IPCC or the International Energy Agency. And as we were saying before, banks have 18 months to issue the targets, 36 months for all economic sectors. So they can start with those that are more relevant for them. For example, they have big exposure in cement and steel. They can work with those 2 first. But after 36 months, we want them to at least have covered the 9. And here are some examples of the targets. We have 12 banks. I think this is as of September or August 2022. For example, the first one is Intesa San Paulo, where they have a power generation baseline 2019 and the target 2030, that is around half of the emissions reduced. And then the other is Citigroup, where they have an overall 63% reduction over the specific amount that they have. We have, again, the 10 largest banks in each region. This is a parallel to the PRB market penetration approach. And here you can see that both in North America, Europe, we're quite successful. And you can see in developing countries, climate takes a bit of a secondary approach, while in the PRB, we can also include SDG-related issues that are critical, as Denise was also explaining. And then finally, what makes net zero pledges credible? We're participating in the Sustainable Finance Working Group of the G20. This is our paper that we provided to them last year, where we outline 11 key principles on what needs a financial institution to comply with in order to have a credible net zero pledge. So I stop here. I think I managed more or less on time. So yeah, it was a lot of content. I tried to cover quickly. So if there's any question, happy to cover that.
It's very, very, very interesting, Daniel. I mean, you know, I'm an EFPA ESG advisor, and I learned a lot, you know, because it's really something where you put a lot of light on a niche that we cover, certainly in some way in our certificate. But with you, the expert, it's like having a torch lamp in a dark tunnel, and you put the light at the right place, and it's a big learning curve with you, Daniel. Thank you very much. And with this, we basically covered our panelists. And as I said before, going into more general questions, I would like to come back to a couple of questions for each of you, basically more related to what you said directly during your presentations, which were absolutely interesting presentation. We need to see, and I will discuss it with Stefka and with Patrick, how we could share these presentations with the guys who are interested to get these slides. I'm sure you will be willing that these slides could be communicated via mail to this big population we have here on this Zoom, because it could be quite useful to have yours and the other slides. Good. Going back to Emanuele, because you began, and it's interesting because in education in ESG is totally key. We know it's totally key. We have education programs that you can buy somewhere in 8 hours. You do what you have to do. After we have, that's where we wanted to position ourselves with 24 hours, meaning 3 days, where we believe that we give the content which is necessary for a client advisor. If we go further up, we have a CFA with the 100 hours. 100 hours is big, huh? Our EFA and our EIP are 80 hours. So 100, it's a lot, a hell of a lot. But it's probably when you analyze this, you need to drill down. So that's also an interesting offer. And finally, we have the master program over, you do all this over 2 years of full-time study, which is again, also a very interesting option, but option which is something that you take when you are beginning your professional life. So the question to Emanuele is, how do you see there a need perhaps to go a little bit beyond? Because very often receives the feedback, you know, between 24 and 100, there is still a certain room to move. Should we somewhere have a level for people who want to go a bit further? How do you see that? How will we adapt to these requirements? Because when I see what Daniel says, oh gosh, there's a certain, perhaps not a complexity, but a certain volume. So Emanuele.
Yeah, Roger, this is a absolutely key point. You have to take into consideration that till now, our main focus for EFPA have been people working in the financial sector as financial advisor, mainly, or as financial planner, few of them. If you take into consideration our population of more than 85,000 certificate holders, we have roughly 60,000 EFA and just 88,000 EFP. So it makes clear that our main focus is on financial advisor. For them, the EFA, it's a fantastic program of 20 days, equivalent classroom equivalent. And we adapted the syllabus in putting in some different module the ESG topics. So in the same, when we were designing from zero the EFPA ESG advisor certificates, we were also reshaping our syllabuses of EFA and EFP, thinking about some knowledge regarding ESG. But after the first year of experience, now we understood exactly what you were telling just a couple of minutes ago, that many people is wondering if we will launch sooner or later a further certificates, and we were thinking about, since we need to get better knowledge, especially on governance, which means that maybe the people who could be interested in our certificates are not only the people working in the financial sector, but for example, people working in the companies who would like to understand how the activity they do in terms of governance in comparison with the mutual funds, which again bring them to be in contact with the financial sector, need to get the knowledge of the way these people work. So we are wondering if it's necessary to start working on preparing a new advanced certificate on ESG for ESG specialists, who takes into consideration not only the environmental topic, which is quite well known, but also governance and social, because how to implement the governance and how to implement the impact investing is something that requires some more deep understanding.
Yeah, so that means that that's really the key of EFPA, as we are professionals delivering certificates to professionals. It has to be very pragmatic and very related to client needs. That some clients will probably expect more or less expertise, and that's why basically, without going to the 100 hours of CFA, there could be room for a type of expert level where some of them could go a mile beyond in order to master what will stay. Yeah, what we have here is a mega trend which will of course stay. Oh, good. Thank you for this answer, Emanuele. If I go to Paul, I would like to re-insist on the role model that you are basically having clearly beyond Europe. Each time I'm traveling, the name of Luxembourg comes to my mind. You really do, and I know that you do a lot of MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, in order to share. And you know, I dedicated 30 years of my life to Asia. I'm somewhere half Asian, and I know Asia like my pocket. And what I do now, in the last part of my professional life, I'm very much dedicated to Africa. And it's interesting because we have Denise who talk about Tanzania. For me, I'm looking at other countries that I really want to go on. And I saw your map, Paul. I saw your map, which is not very green in Africa. And you probably understand my question. The role model. There is a lot to do in Africa. Are you taking initiatives? I look at Africa, to be very frank. I went to China in '95. And I said, this country will be completely different in 30 years. And look what happened. Look what happened. It's amazing. And I say today, with my eyes of 2022, the same will happen on the African continent in 2050. It's not tomorrow, huh? But 2050 is very close. Everything will explode, including the demography. So what role could the golden star of Luxembourg Stock Exchange and LGX in particular play in order to wake up a continent which has an amazing potential over the last 20 to 30 years? Paul.
I'm really happy with this question, Roger. Thank you so much that you've touched upon the, outside Europe, because I mean, sustainable finance is quite advanced, let's say in Europe, but we really need to look outside if we want really to make, to reach the objectives. I mean, just take it from a Paris Agreement point of view or SDGs. only doing business in Europe or in the United States, the developed economies, it's not going to happen. If you ignore, again, like big countries, India, China, and definitely Africa and Latin America, we won't reach the objectives. You've mentioned the MOUs, and on the level of the stock exchange of Luxembourg, definitely we are maybe amongst the fastest stock exchanges to sign memorandum of understanding with so many other exchanges coming from different parts of the world. And in the last couple of years, I would say that the focus of this memorandum of understanding is becoming quite obvious. Sustainable finance knowledge sharing with those stock exchanges and with other countries. And just to give some concrete examples, so we have an MOU, for instance, with the Nigeria Stock Exchange. You have two exchanges in Nigeria. So with both exchanges, we have a memorandum of understanding. We have one with Rwanda. We have one with Cabo Verde. It's a very small country, but still belongs to Africa. And no one knows actually about this unless you go there for, tourism reasons. But actually, there is a lot going on sustainable finance. And I just came back 10 days ago from Cabo Verde for a capacity building mission with the local stock exchange, who is actually active in sustainable finance and in issuing social and sustainability bonds. No one knows about this in the international market. And no investor maybe is interested in investing in those instruments in such a small country. But just to say that those countries are doing a lot, but we need also to help them in becoming more visible and bringing them into the international stage. You've mentioned Asia. On the level of LGX Academy, 2 years ago, we provided capacity building for Vietnam. And we provided, and again, maybe in 10 days, I will be providing capacity building also to other parts in Asia, including Sri Lanka and Cambodia and other parts. Everyone actually is looking at sustainable finance, and thanks God, I would say they're looking to Luxembourg as a model where they can bring a lot of knowledge, especially when it comes to the debt capital market, where we actually have I would say, a role model in this. So I totally agree with you that Luxembourg, somehow, it's not only the exchange, because we see it also on the level of the government, but it's not for me to talk about this. But I would like to link this also to what's happening on the capital market level and on the international level. Actually, there is a huge focus on Africa now. I mean, look, on the European level, there is a huge focus on Africa, and there's a huge potential in Africa. Just take, for example, Namibia, just take Ghana, just take Rwanda, definitely. And now we know that the COP in a couple of weeks is in Egypt, but it's the African COP. So they are using Egypt, but it's for the continent. So there is a huge potential to do sustainable finance in Africa and in some other countries. And we're glad that we're expanding on the level of the Green Exchange to look after some of these countries, together with some UN agencies, by the way, with UNDP for Africa, or with the UN ESCAP for Asia, and also with the GGGI, the Global Green Growth Institute, again for Africa and for some other countries. So we are with other partners trying to focus our expertise to foster sustainable finance in these regions.
Thank you. Very clear answer, Paul. Perfect. Yeah. Moving now to Denise. Denise, there's still somewhere that a point that you could bring us some light, because I remember well the needs of the corporate world in Luxembourg, in the big mega structures of the investment fund industry, these great companies, very hard corporate world, Kemalist Denise working disciplined in this environment. And suddenly, a few years later, we discover Denise, who is obsessed by this mission to make positive impact, which that's a huge transformation. I mean, that I observed, and I'm quite happy to even though I have some ideas of the answer, but please share this answer with 800 people listening to us, because it's an interesting story, because you are a corporate animal by definition, and suddenly, poof, you are very different. Denise.
Yeah, that's actually the life experience, I can say. Things happen for us so that we find our path, where to go. I mean, I worked 25 years on the corporates, plus 2 years in Turkey with the Pricewaterhouse. And I studied engineering, so I was very mind person, you know, going to a company, get a good title, good money, and you know, the title gives satisfaction, which does, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But what happened was in 2014, I think, because of the stress and number of hours I'm doing, and things happening, and I was having CFA exams and, you know, working until 2 o'clock in the morning at home, you know, work and studying and family and everything. I had a panic attack. I ran to an ambulance and ended up in the hospital. And that opened my mind suddenly. I said, there is something wrong here that I need to make a change. It's not, and after 25 years, maybe I was looking for something that is more exciting, which was more aligned with my ikigai, like mentioned, give something back as well and sort my life. And we went to Dubai as a whole family. I left the State Street and then moved to Dubai with nothing, no plans whatsoever. And there I found the sustainability, and things again happened for me. So I had to come to Switzerland. In Switzerland, I remember that discussion. I didn't even know what Crypto Valley was. And then Roger said, you're moving to Crypto Valley. I said, oh, really? Am I? And then suddenly I got 2 clients, thanks to Roger again. And I learned fintech, and fintech brought me into impact projects because I saw that technology and the impact projects become very powerful when they are combined together. And slowly that moved me. I created the company and then continued with that path. But at the same time, I got a mentor to guide me, who I am, what I want to do, how I can contribute, what I'm good at, you know, how can I have a balanced life? So that's the reason. What happened at that time, being open to what is coming, and then also working on myself as the personal development, opened the new things. And I ended up in the impact investing. And the moment I said I want to give back to Turkey, then I suddenly got the connection at UNDP, and I was able to work 4 months for Turkey. So it's really the mind and where is our heart is. And now I became impact. That's what I'm talking about, SDGs all the time. So, you know, that's my story, basically.
Yeah. Interesting. Very great. Thank you for sharing in a very sincere way, Denise. Finally, a last point for Danielle. Danielle, I'm a deep historical apostle of auto-regulation. I worked on many projects with auto-regulation. Not only in Luxembourg, where we made major steps forward, but also in Asia, in Singapore in particular. And also in Switzerland, by the way, is also a place where auto-regulation fits well. Why do I mention it? Because I listened very well to you, Danielle. And one way could well be that some banks, insurance companies, some clusters, they decide to do something together, not only Intesa Sanpaolo and Citi in this corner, but let's say all the Italian banks somewhere, they say, let's do something together. I call it auto-regulation. So meaning your organization has nothing to say, the Italian regulator has nothing to say, nobody has nothing to say, but they do it because they are part of a cluster. Is auto-regulation part of the key solutions moving forward on all the pillars that you mentioned in your excellent presentation, Danielle?
Thanks. I mean, what I could say is like, we have regulatory measures. In Europe, it is clear. I mean, it's the most developed sustainable finance regulatory framework ever. Probably is the most regulated place ever. So what we see is that, of course, I mean, our initiatives are all voluntary initiatives where the banks join and commit. So what I would say is like, yes, it has a role and we are part of it. I mean, we're playing it. We're actually, let's say, participating in that because we understand that while regulation can do some things very well, there's also the commitment that can do some things very well. So there are complementary approaches. In some jurisdictions, it works better than in others. You can also think, you have some countries where the common law versus continental law is also different. The approaches to the market are also differing. And indeed, and of course, we have seen that as well, given that our global approaches have been quite successful, there are several countries that have also released their own climate commitments within the financial industry or within the broader business community. You have the Netherlands. They have a very concrete climate commitment as well as human rights, etc. And that is, let's say, also agreed with other partners. So yeah, I think it's all in the play of this dance again between private and public, between regulation and voluntary. It's all part of the same, if everybody is actually aiming to the same goal. I think that is the critical element that we also as the UN are trying to bring, that I think it's great to see the initiatives, but harmonization needs also to be the goal. And I think that is one of the key elements that is very complex to actually standardize. And also the different, let's say, jurisdictions have different priorities. So I don't know if it fully answers, but yes.
You do, yes. You do, because there is a very strong stream in a certain direction. And what we could imagine is clubs who move faster than other ones. This could be a type of, perhaps not auto-regulation, because you need to be aligned to what is on the regulation. But clusters who decide, look here in the country so-and-so, let's again take Italy or Luxembourg, where basically the banks could say, look, let's try to talk together, and instead of Intesa Sanpaolo just goes alone, they're talking with Unicredit, they talk with Banco de Emilia Romagna, and et cetera, and this gives a type of dialogue. But you answered the question very clear. We have now basically a bit less than half an hour, where we have, I would structure it in this way. We will dedicate 20 minutes to a certain number of questions that should be asked to you, and the last 10 minutes where I will go to the screen and see the questions that came in, and we will answer them as long as they are relevant with the material that we had shared together. But let's rapidly go through a certain number of questions. And sometimes that I hear, and I even heard it last week when I was the whole week in Luxembourg in order to see many people. And I receive always, you know, Roger, for you it's a crusade. You are like an apostle, you walk, and that's fine. Good, continue, please continue. But isn't it somewhere a fad or a fashion? It's the fashion. No, the fashion of these 5 years, and suddenly it will disappear because we say, well, why did we put so much importance? Is it a fashion, or is it something that? That's a question I receive very often, and I wanted to share it with you. But do you also receive these feedbacks or these questions, having doubts? Not all people are convinced. Some people still say they don't say it's bullshit because they would be probably rude to say it, but they can think it and not say it. What do you think all here around the table?
I take the floor, Roger, because actually when all the ESG discussion started a couple of years ago, my first reaction was exactly as the one who asked you, are you sure that it's a crucial choice? I thought that it could be just a commercial way to get a new story to present to the customer, nothing more. Then we saw in a very concrete way that there has been a real push coming from the regulator and from the European Commission. So, which means that it has been in some way a political and regulatory push, which came out with a concrete results. I am also board member of Eurizon Capital Asset Management, which is one of the biggest company at European level, and in any case, the biggest asset management company related with a banking network, Intesa San Paolo in Italy, and the way we started rethinking on the products we offer to our clients through the network of Intesa has been completely focused in a very serious way on ESG. And in order to be sure that no one could think that it was just a greenwashing solution, we also asked for an independent check on our methodology we decided to adopt in order to decide which is the right target company to be invested on or not, which means that we really think that ESG is an added value in the long run. And if I can say in a broader way, the reaction that the market got in this very tough period, just looking at the number of the net inflows or outflows, but also on the market effect, if you do the analysis on the whole asset management industry, mainly through the mutual funds, you see that in the first 9 months of 2022, the net outflows have been quite similar among the two separate words, the non-ESG versus ESG. But the market effect has been absolutely different. All the ESG products suffered much less than what they did the non-ESG mutual funds, which means that the ESG economy has shown to be able to be much more resilient in this very tough period.
Yeah, thank you. Other remarks with the panelists about this fashion issue?
Yeah, maybe if I may,
yes.
Just briefly. I mean, I could say that this comes and goes with many topics, no? Like, were computers a fashion when they started and changed business? You know, like, is anti-money laundering a fashion as well? And with regards to ESG and climate, I think is the same. I mean, if you are able to consider how your portfolio, like the emissions that you finance in your portfolio, are going to impact the planet, that is going to impact the climate, and the climate is going to come back to your portfolio to hurt you if you are not managing the risks and the alignment correctly. So I think that the next steps that we're going to see is an increased consideration. And I think this is a phrase that Valdis Dombrovskis, that was the DG FISMA commissioner, now is from the, let's say, the DG Trade. He was saying during many years that, you know, once you mainstream sustainable finance, you will not ever again talk about sustainable finance. You will just talk about the new normal of finance that would be already integrated as sustainable. It's just a matter of being able to integrate these considerations as many other business considerations have been integrated. And again, I won't repeat myself.
No, that's very, very, very clear. Yes, thank you. Something else before I go to a second question?
One thing I want to say is there's always the resistance to change when there's something new. That's why there's all these courses about change management, to actually teach how to go with the change. I think that's where the problem resides as well. All these SDGs, ESGs, they have a way of moving forward, and then we just need to bring people together and then to have an understanding so that we walk in that path together. So and that comes with training a lot. What does that mean? What does SDG mean? Is a guide, so we can apply those concepts in our lives, in our businesses, in our companies, in our boards, in our advisors. So that's the only way, I think, without being judged and not resisting to change, by speaking and collaborating. SDG 17 to me is one of the most important ones. Collaboration, partnership, working together, co-create will actually start putting those different minds into a specific path. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because having change a bit in mind, which brings me directly to the next question, which is very related to what we could say is a regulatory tsunami generated by all the ESG issues over the last 2-3 years, a tsunami. And what I listen very often in people working in banks, in insurance, in the financial industry in general, they feel somewhere having difficulties to integrate so much change in such a short period of time. Is it also something which comes to you in your different environment? You know, it came so fast, it overwhelmed us like the tsunami, but on a regulatory basis. What do you think?
Maybe I can say a couple of words here, Roger. I totally agree, and I just recall what we were saying to some of the participants of our sessions last week with the presence of our head of regulatory affairs. It's exactly on this point that on the level of European Union, let's take the European Union as an example because it's much more visible to everyone. The rapidity, if you take the Climate Action Plan 2018 until 2022, only in 4 years, we have seen, as you said, the huge amount of new regulations on the European level coming related to ESG. And for the ones who are expert with how the European Commission and the European Parliament and other European institutions work, they usually don't work that fast. So when it comes to ESG, it's really fast. And we see it on our side also, because if you remember with the SFDR 1 year ago, there was a huge problem, and still, but there was a huge problem with the date of application of the first level of the measures of SFDR to all the funds in the in Europe, while the second level of the technical criteria were not yet available, were not there. So there was this push to start applying, even if you still don't have enough information about it. So there was a huge push on the industry, I would say, coming from the regulation part, which is something that has its positive points, because otherwise we don't have enough time. Let's put it like this. We are not in a luxury period where we say, okay, now we can work on, the taxonomy, and maybe 10 years after we will work on something else. No, everything should be taking place at the same time. And there is a huge wave of regulations that took place in these 4 years. But now I would say the real exam is the implementation of these regulations that will come in the upcoming 3 to 4 years, because all what is related to disclosures for the financial institutions will start implementing in 2023 after, as you know, the taxonomy will be in place, the SFDR regulation is in place, the CSRD in place. So now we will see how the financial sector will be reacting and implementing those regulations. And this is the big challenge now in the market.
Thank you, Paul. Other remarks? If not, I have another point which could be of interest that I put on my paper. Europe is moving very fast in a very consistent way, aligned, to use the word of Daniel, in a common direction. And if I take left and right, east and west, we have 2 big blocks. We have Northern America and Asia. They also do something, but they do it in a different way, or in a less coordinated way. So the question is directly addressed to Daniel, because you are from the United Nations, you are sitting in Europe for the European responsibility, but you must talk heavily with your colleagues east and west. How does it work? It's quite a practical question about this famous alignment that you mentioned several times.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good question. The answer is that we are at different levels. I mean, even within Europe, as you remember, let's say my broad understanding of Europe, it is not the same, let's say, the countries that are in the EU and those that are not. There is a strong difference between, let's say, the level of regulation that the 27 can do with regards to the others. Of course, you have, let's say, United Kingdom, Switzerland, the EA countries. Okay, fine. That is let's say, more or less similar. Still, the level of regulation in the EU is quite big. What we see is that there is an interest in harmonizing, but a lot of disaggregate approaches. For example, we're now collaborating with our colleagues in Latin America to develop a common framework to develop taxonomies in the region. If you look at Asia, for example, China, they have their own taxonomy. The European Commission is already working to compare it with the common ground taxonomy. We're also quite interested in that because we understand that if you generate these comparisons and you start seeing where the things are coming together, you can understand better the synergies, etc. And in that regard, for example, the International Platform on Sustainable Finance is quite concrete. It's also working, for example, with Singapore and other countries that are already developing as well their own frameworks. In other cases, we also have completely different approaches. Like in the US, we have the SEC with the rule, and it's more aligned, let's say, with the ISSB, that is looking at single materiality approaches that only want to understand, let's say, the climate risk approach, which is also totally understandable, and they have a different approach to business. Again, this difference between the highly regulated European markets versus the highly regulated, in a different way, American markets. No? So the dialogue is very important, the harmonization as well, but as we have seen, for example, in the G20 discussions in the Sustainable Finance Working Group, the approach varies a lot because you can look into risk, you can look into alignment, but you can also look into transition. And normally transition finance really encompasses a lot of these approaches. And for example, both Switzerland and Japan are quite keen on the transition elements and to really understand what are the pathways, how financial institutions should look into that. So all of this is still moving pieces, but the key different elements are there. And we're monitoring it. We're trying, let's say, from different ways, from different areas to try and coordinate, harmonize as much as possible. But again, we are the UN. We try to help everybody to increase their ambition and to maintain it and to keep working towards the same goal. That is, again, the SDGs, the Paris Climate Agreement. But we understand that there are different speeds all over. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Daniel. Some other additional points on this East and West approach? No.
Maybe I would like just maybe
please,
one word.
Please, Paul, yes.
Because Daniel mentioned the taxonomies and the work on harmonizing the taxonomies, which is definitely very important. And we follow the work of the International Platform on Sustainable Finance on the Common Ground taxonomy and all of this. But I would like just only to mention something that you know, all of these taxonomies should take into account also the local context of each country. And definitely you cannot put all the countries in the same place because it has to do with their economic advancement also. I mean, you cannot apply the same taxonomy for everyone. And this is a very important point to take into consideration. You cannot ask, you know, emerging economies or developing economies also to apply very stringent rules similar to the EU taxonomy, for instance, when it comes to the transition to sustainable finance. This is why we always say in our sessions, maybe the aim of all of these talks about harmonization, it's not to come to one size fits all, because one size fits all will not fit anyone. It's about trying to align as much as possible and not to have big differences between, you know, what we are talking about. So I just wanted to highlight this point.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you very much. And I also look at my watch, and we have now a bit more than 10 minutes because I want to be extremely precise, because it's also a question of courtesy and politeness for all the people to listen to us, and we will close at 7 sharp. I have now a certain number of questions coming from the participants that I would somewhere like to scroll and to see. Probably here, if I can begin and I read, because it's all on in the Q&A that people used. A question which is probably for Daniel here. ESG, is it really a better way to invest, or it is just a trend which is going to fail? This question is from my clients, and partially also for me, because I have doubts. What is a disadvantage of ESG at common capital markets? That's a question which is coming from the participants.
I would say, Roger, that when we were talking just a couple of minutes before regarding if the ESG is just a trend or a real impact on the decision, I think that we already gave to Jacob
That's right. You are right.
good answer.
Yeah.
I would go straight to the second, which is quite nice request. Is the debt raised from a green bond really invested for a particular green project or business line? I don't know if Denise or some of our great speaker can give some.
Or Paul or Denise.
Paul.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's probably
Yes,
more a question for
if you
Paul
don't
and
mind, but
Denise.
definitely
Yeah.
everyone, if you would like to share. Well,
Yeah.
basically, if the issuer of a green bond follows the principles and the basic rule when you issue a green bond, which is using the 100% of the funds raised in green projects, then this question should not exist. Now, the big question definitely is around the greenwashing. Is it really the case or not? And definitely I can understand your concern, because we have seen in the market a lot of issuers claiming to be issuing green bonds to invest them in green projects. And maybe they failed this, or they didn't manage to prove that their projects were green. And that leads us also to the question of green based on what? Based on which taxonomy, and how much this taxonomy is stringent or not. What I would like just to highlight, to keep it in your mind, now, after almost 15 years of the existence of green bonds in the market, the rule is quite clear. You cannot issue a green bond in the market and invest the money in something else, because you will be risking your reputation as an issuer, because everyone else is issuing a green bond and they are investing them in green projects, because they are following very clear principles coming from ICMA. So if you are an issuer who would like to risk your reputation, then be my guest.
Yeah. Denise, a view on that? Yes.
Yeah, I will approach more on the, not the bonds, but on the more private equity or VC world. Is to me, for the greenwashing, to prevent it, to define, to catch it, I would say, is the impact measurement and management is the key. So when we go into the impact investing projects, this is one of the things that we look also when we go through the projects and the businesses of the entrepreneurs presenting to investors. We say, what is the impact they are intending? And then how do they achieve that? And impact is long-term, so vision is long-term. So the main thing there is to come to certain KPIs, because KPIs guide the vision of the company, the goals of the company, to come to those KPIs and start really measuring that. And this is new. There are methods, and then there are a lot of things that we need to work on, especially on the data, the completeness of the data, the healthy data, to be able to come really KPI. I don't know how many cancer treatment are done, for example, to find these numbers and then to achieve the KPI that we intend to. If the project achieves that, in that case, there is no greenwashing, because the project or the business is doing what they intend to do, what their goals are. So this is the way that numbers are important. And we need to go to the numbers, financial and non-financial. Results will show the process and the results, in my opinion.
It's very interesting, because Denise, you used the word, and I realized suddenly after 2 hours of discussion, we never used the word really clearly of greenwashing, which is a major issue. And you mentioned it because it's, of course, still a big fight to be able to identify what is really green and what is not. And we perfectly know that under Article 8 and Article 9, there are plenty of things who are not aligned in the way they should be. And the fact that you mentioned greenwashing, it's funny, it's a topic that we didn't put the light, perhaps because we talked too much about that, and we wanted to talk about other things. But thank you. I think we have time to take a last question, again, with my obsession to be on time. It's quite a practical question about the war in Ukraine and all what is going on, and the impact on the emissions targets in Europe. Let's say 2030, which is tomorrow. It's in 7 years. We have a high inflation rate. We have all what is going in Europe. How do these factors alter this long road towards 230, 250? This will always be the case. We will always have a type of, it's not a small accident, it's major issues, but say, do they make us derail? What is the impact? That's basically the question of one of our participants who wanted to put light on what is politically and geostrategically happening in Eastern Europe. Who wants to take this ball? It's quite
I can start maybe.
Yes.
And I will leave it definitely for the others to complement and to add. Well, definitely the current geopolitical situation is raising big concerns when it comes to the goals of Europe in what is related to reaching climate objectives, because we have heard already before maybe the war started in Ukraine, the big debate on the European level, whether on including nuclear and gas within the taxonomy or not. But suddenly the war started and there was a kind of, you've seen, we need to include nuclear and gas because now there will be shortage in gas, so we need nuclear. And this is a big exam, actually. It's a big challenge now in order to try to keep the promises while we will be facing shortages in some other, fuel that are coming from Russia. Some observers in the market are saying, well, this is the momentum actually for ESG investments to accelerate, while some others are more pessimistic, saying that it's a big challenge and we won't manage actually to keep our promises because for other priorities that we will have on the level of European Union, the inflation, the quality of life and all of this. And maybe we have seen already some deviations, I would say, from some countries on the European level in order to assure the current or the local supplies for the energy. So they started a little bit to deviate from their promises, but it's a big challenge. I don't have a final answer for it, but it's a big challenge.
Other inputs before closing? Professor Emanuele, what is your view on that?
No, on this specific topic, there is just one more question, very, very short. Helge Kostlas says, asking, financial theory, isn't ESG investments always suboptimal as it is an investment constraints? It depends, because